Hey everybody, Matt Scarborough, Scarborough Bicycle Accident Law. I am so pleased to have on the podcast today Stefano Barberi, who is our latest sponsored athlete representing the West Coast side of things, even though he has some Florida roots, which I want to talk about today. But of course, the podcast is brought to you by our law firm, Scarborough Bicycle Accident Law, where we're pleased to represent cyclists throughout the country. And our latest edition here on the West Coast has been greatly enhanced by Stefano's presence. He's going to be able to tell you the story, but he has a long, long history in bicycle racing. I think originally from Brazil, was on the world tour, has done all types of road racing, and then became a privateer in 2018. So thanks, Stefano, for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Also, huge thanks for the support this season. It's been great working with you and the rest of the bicycle accident law staff. It's been super helpful to have you guys, and just especially the peace of mind of just having that support when I'm on my bike every day. My wife really appreciates it.
Well, good. Well, we never want to hear about anybody being involved in an event or an accident, but just yesterday we had a local rider in Florida, in the Vero Beach area, who was involved in an incident, and luckily we were able to help him literally on the scene, and we're going to get him back to recovery. But when you're out there, as you got to have your head on a swivel, and we want everybody to know that we're with them 24/7. That's for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us, I know a lot of people may be familiar with some of your background and experience, but if you don't mind kind of telling our audience a little bit about you and your background in cycling before becoming a privateer in 2018.
Yeah, so been riding bikes and racing bikes since I was a little kid. So my oldest son now, he's gonna be 8 next month. And that's about the same age that I started riding bikes. And I was living in Brazil back then. And this is the beginning of mountain bikes, at a high level. So basically, back then, when I started racing and riding, mountain bikes was at the same point as gravel is at the current moment. This huge boom where people are getting into cycling and buying gravel bikes, and all this technology advancement that we're getting now. We were basically at that same point back then. And this is back in 1993, 92, 93.
Right.
uh yeah, and mountain biking was new. It was a fad. It was a fad in Brazil at the time. I had some older kids that used to live in my city. They used to ride bikes. A couple of them even made it to world championships and things like that.
Right.
um but yeah, I kept going to bike races, and my friends, every bike race I would go to, I'll have one or two less friends that would come with me, and I just kept doing it, and they kept getting older, whatever, whatever. And then when I was 12, I moved to Florida with my family, with my dad and my mom, my younger brother. And I just kept racing. Got into the Florida scene and all of that. I moved to Boca Raton originally, and then I was there for middle school and high school, and then I lived in Orlando for a year and a half. But I started racing mountain bikes in Florida, Sandblaster Series, the Gone Riding, all of that. And just kind of moving up through the categories. I think when I was 13, I was racing the sport class, which is basically like the Cat threes now. So I guess some grown ups.
Right.
Um, and then my senior year in high school, I turned pro as a mountain biker first. So when I was around 18, and then I think later that year, a friend of mine that owns a bike shop, B&J bike shops in Boynton Beach. He was like, "Hey man, we have a Cat 3 team. We would love to have you come out and ride with us and go to some of the races. It'd be great training." I was like, "Cool. I don't have anything else going on right now," so I ended up
Right.
going. And it was great. My first race was as a Cat 3. I never did any of the juniors or anything like that on the road bikes. It was straight into Cat 3 racing Florida, which was part of the Florida State Series.
Right.
And then it ended up winning. So all of a sudden it's like, all right, I'm winning. I was making good prize money for, for the local series. I ended up being a Cat 3 for 3 weekends. I won, I think, 6 races in a row. And then I went to the seventh race. Started doing some of the local, Florida bike races, and we used to race, Saturday and Sunday. So I did 3 weekends. I think I won all 6 races that weekend, and I was making good prize money. And then
Wow.
I went to the fourth weekend in a row, and they're like, we upgraded you to a Cat 1. I was like, I
And
didn't ask
how
for
old were you,
this.
Stefano, at the time that you got upgraded to Cat 1?
19.
Okay.
But
Right.
I was already racing, like back then it was the Norba mountain bike races, so they were
Sure.
like high level equivalent
Yes.
to Lifetime now. Um,
So
but
were you racing with like some of the legends of the sport, Tomac and Overend and some of those folks, or?
so I know, well, no. So I think at that point Ned had already kind of backed off a little bit. I know
Okay.
Ned pretty well these days.
Hmm.
Tomac, he was, I think, towards the very end of his mountain bike stuff, but he was
Okay.
racing mostly downhill stuff,
I see.
gravity.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, still, you look at some of the names now, and stuff that you remember, and especially now, vintage stuff is cool. So like that '90s
Yeah.
thing is super cool to see. But so then, yeah, the beginning of 2004, I did Athens Twilight, and I initiated the break in the pro race, and had a good ride there. And I met Jonathan Vaughters there.
Hmm.
He was there for Tour Georgia, and he had a new team, which eventually, back then it was first year, right? It was small. It was a development team, but eventually grew to be EF Education, which is a world tour team now.
Of course.
So I ended up signing with him sometime in the middle of that season. So I rode for him 2004 and five. And then I was on some other big teams, you know, road racing, Toyota United and Kenda Pro Cycling, and some other ones. Um, I did a little bit of racing in Europe. I did a bunch of world tour races. I was never on a world tour team,
Hmm.
to be specific. But I did Ruta du Sud, which is like the last race before the tour. So everybody is absolutely flying.
Right.
Um, so this is 2005. So I guess I was around 21 at the time.
Sure.
And then the thing I decided pretty early on that I didn't want to race in Europe. The racing was okay. I didn't have much of a problem with that, but the lifestyle back then was really difficult. Like
Hmm.
Zoom didn't exist, smartphones didn't exist. So like you go out to Europe and you're there. Like if I wanted
Right.
to talk to family members, I had to ride my bike into like a little French town, argue with some French guy in a
Right.
smoke shop who was angry that
Yeah.
this rude American wasn't speaking French to him, so he didn't want to sell me a phone card. And then eventually, like you know, he would sell the phone card, and then you get like about 7 or 8 minutes to call home if you have to go to a payphone to do
Yeah.
that. So like the lifestyle was difficult. During that year to when I was out there in Europe is when I got the news, that my dad was sick, and I it was like you should probably come to Brazil now to see your dad, or you might not have any time later,
Hmm.
and I just couldn't go, so um, I decided pretty quickly that I didn't want to be in Europe full time. And
Right.
also, this is the back of the lens effect, so there was a lot of money in road racing, and I could make a good living racing in the States and be comfortable, make decent money. There's also, all the stuff with doping at the time, and it was this very strange time. So to me, it was a easy decision to stay in the U.S. and do that. And I had great support the following years with when I was on Toyota United. I knew Frankie Andreu, who was the director there. I knew him from years before.
Okay.
He was on Postal.
Mhm.
Um, and basically I was the only guy on that team that didn't come from the World Tour because it was kind of like the place where they wanted to win everything in the US. So they picked up some really strong riders, and we were the most dominating team ever in domestic history. Biggest budget and all of that. It was very short lived. It was only 3 years, but we accomplished a lot during that time. Um, but so after that, I just stayed racing in the U.S. I did all the big races in the U.S. To Utah's, Georgia, California, all of that, and had great results at most of them.
Mhm.
I've won NRC races, I've won UCI races, and you name it. I mean, you look at some of those events, you take out the people that talk about doping. Don't want to get too negative, but you take out some of those
Yep.
names, and all of a sudden I'm on podiums and or winning
Mhm.
a lot of these events. But it is what it is. But
Did you have a specialty that you or did you have a specialty that you thought you had when you were cycling? Were you a climber? Uh,
I was always a little bit of like an early break specialist.
mhm.
That was kind of something that always did me well. I won a lot of KOM jerseys and stages and things like that by just, making it into the early break and,
Right.
having a little bit of luck and good legs and making it stick at the end of the day. But,
Mhm.
climbing has always been something that I've liked and enjoyed. I'm 5'9", but I'm on the very light side of cycling
Mhm.
for my height. So, climbing definitely suits me. I enjoy it, Um, so stages, like for example, since now you're in band, I did the Cascade Classic 13 times and
13 times. Wow.
13, yeah.
Okay.
And the final day was always a day that was really good for me. It was a rolling circuit race. So, climbs of like 5-ish minutes.
Okay.
That day, I think I made the break more often than not. Out of the 13 times that I, did that stage, it was always a good one for me. Um, just basically days where, it's kind of hard all the way from start to finish. So it kind of suits me a bit now because, that's what gravel and mountain bike races are. They say go and it's full gas, all the way from
Right.
from from tape to tape. Um, yeah, and then like I said, I did Cascade 13 times. I did Gila 13 times. North Star, Redlands, Joe Martin, Utah, California, all of those events. Um, and around 2017, I was a little bit bored because you're just kind of going to these events again and again, and
Mhm.
at the bachelor stage, I can tell you the mile marker that the break goes every year.
Right. Right.
Uh, so I had to go do Cascade Classic and the High Cascades mountain bike race, which is part of the Mudslinger events, was 3 days before. So I was like, that looks really fun and different. I've never done a mountain bike race that is 100 miles long. At that point, I had never done a 100-mile mountain bike ride before.
So this was what year that you'd never done a 100-mile mountain bike ride before?
2017.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So I had a friend that was going up there to go race Cascade Classic with me. He was on the rally team at the time, but he had to go up. He had family up there, so I asked him to take one of my bikes with him because he was driving up. And then I flew up and took my mountain bike with me, and then ended up. That's when I met Mike Ripley from
Mm.
Mudslinger Events, which you guys are also sponsors of.
Shout out to Ripley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I've been friends with Mike since then. The race was really fun in a way because I didn't really know how anything worked. I
Right.
didn't know how aid stations worked. I didn't know how it was going to go for 100 miles mountain bike ride or anything.
Mm.
And then the other funny thing is that my bike showed up, but none of my suitcase didn't show up.
Oh no. Okay.
So so the race started Saturday at 5:30 a.m. And there was a chance that my suitcase might show up in like this 3 a.m. flight in Redmond. So my buddy had a van, and he's like, "Take my van, go park outside the airport, and see if your bag shows up." So at like 3 a.m., I run into the airport to
Oh
see
my
if
God.
by
Right.
any chance my stuff showed up, and it didn't. So then my friend was like, "Dude, you're already here. You're gonna be up at 3 a.m. So like, just go to the start." So I did the race in his kit, his uncle's helmet. I always travel my own shoes because if something like this happened, at least you have your own shoes.
Sure.
So I had my bike and my shoes, but everything else was borrowed.
Oh,
You know, Never done a mountain bike race that long and anything like that. It's the first mountain bike race I've done in years.
sure.
But had an awesome time. Actually, almost won it. I took a wrong turn with about 20 miles to go. So that was kind of the end of my day. I should have won it, but that was
Yeah.
part of my learning lesson, like the following GPS and
Right.
all that. There's no lead cars and lead motos or anything like that. So like I was really excited about that. I thought it was a lot of fun, and then I did Cascades Classic, and I was like, okay, all right, bachelor stage again for like the 20 whatever time that I've done this
Yeah.
stage. Um, and then I ended up doing a couple events. I did the Epic Rides Carson City event, which is actually super close to where I live now, and I ride a lot of those trails
Mm.
now. And yeah, at the end of the year, I was like, I'm kind of over this road cycling thing. There's not much money here. I could see that, the trend where, road cycling was kind of going down a little bit, and the money
Mhm.
that we could make was way down already. Teams were starting to fold, events were starting to fold. And I was like, I had a lot of fun doing the endurance mountain bike thing, but it wasn't a thing yet. It was, I told my buddy who's another pro road racer that I was gonna plan on doing that and get my own sponsors and just fund my racing that way. And he's like, you can do that? I was like, I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it
Sure.
out.
Right.
So it was cool because I got a head start with the whole privateer thing, because 2 years later, all of a sudden you have a couple of world tour guys that step down from world tour and they're like, I can get my own sponsors. Cool. I'll go do this gravel thing.
Hmm.
At that point, I'm already 2 years ahead. So it worked out really well. But, and then gravel came along and, you know, where you see where it's at now,
It's
so
taken off. It's crazy.
yeah, so it's cool. So I guess I can say I've been doing the gravel and or at least the privateer lifestyle thing for a long time, and I've had some time to kind of figure it out and figure out ways of being beneficial to sponsors and things like that, and separate myself a little bit from my peers.
Well, you obviously have loved it for a long time. Do you think it's kind of sparked a new interest in you to go bounce back and forth between gravel and mountain biking versus the road scene?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that keeps it fresh for me because I grew up mountain biking, and then back around 2003 I was racing these big events, all these, Norba races and, the US World Cups at the time and all of that. And just annihilated, because back then it was the people that were coming to the Norba events it was basically World Cups, So as a
Right.
19-year-old, we didn't have a U-23 category back then. You're racing basically just straight to World Tour. Um, but then all of a sudden I started doing road racing and I'm winning events, and it's like, all right, winning is a lot of fun,
Yeah.
So like I just kind of made that transition, but also like the money on mountain biking back then, I didn't really know this, but the money back then was going down and then
Hmm.
moving out towards road bikes because Lance and winning the tour and all of that. So it kind of worked out because I moved to road racing, and all of a sudden, there's this huge amount of money that shifts over now. And it's kind of what happened again later, so I'm just kind of in a way watching the trends and seeing what's happening. I can see that events are folding and teams are going away, and more and more people are without spots in road teams, or having opportunities to make a living. So I can see that, but also I'm kind of looking at it as like what's fun for me.
Hmm.
And after doing all these road events, I'm looking at it like I'm not having fun going to the same thing over and over again and doing the same things. But then I go to a mountain bike race and it's like, wow, this is really fun. I'm actually learning stuff again. I have to figure out how to race a bike here. I don't know who I'm racing with or who these people around me are. I don't
Right.
know how the racing takes, the patterns of the bike race, the aid stations, equipment. Got to familiarize myself with all of that stuff again. So it's like, all right, I spent the last 10 years trying to get one what better at, to go faster. Where here, if I learn all these things, I can shave 5, 10 minutes off, and it's exciting for me to learn. So I'm kind of just following whatever makes me happy, whatever I'm enjoying at the time, and it just so happens that I'm just slightly ahead of the curve for the past 25 years,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of played out that way a little bit. I'm doing what I enjoy, and all of a sudden, like the curve is sort of catching up to me, and so I started doing the endurance mountain bike events, which there wasn't a whole lot of it. And then next thing you know, like I go to some gravel events. That same year, I did Belgian Waffle Ride in California in 2017.
Mhm.
I did that race on a road bike with 25 millimeter clincher with
Okay.
tubes.
Okay.
It's a gravel event.
Right. Wow.
Uh, so you wouldn't be caught dead. And even in a road race, you're not riding 25 millimeter
Yeah.
tires with tubes. Uh, so I'm doing that back then. And then, it's starting to all of a sudden starts to bubble a little bit. And then next thing you know, it's like, all right, gravel events. And then, uh, the mountain bike stuff some of the endurance stuff starts to kind of grow a little bit, and then lifetime comes in, and all of a sudden it's like that's all it is anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody's really making much. There's very few people that are making much money at least in the US, outside of gravel and endurance mountain bike events. There's no
Yeah.
money in
Well,
road cycling. There's not much in unless your goal is to go to the Olympics. Like there's no reason to do the XC mountain bike stuff anymore.
yeah. Well, I think your joy is showing in the results. I mean, you got second last weekend, right, in rock
Yeah,
column,
rock cobbler. Yeah,
which for the people that don't know, that is a super unique event. I've seen it on video a few times. Can
yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that event and the uniqueness of it?
It's maybe the strangest race event, that not it's not even a race.
Right.
It's just the strangest event that I think we do all year. It's not a race, but at the same time, anytime you put a start and a finish line and timing chips and
Sure.
people are gonna race.
Yes.
And so we turn it into a race. But yeah, it's the whole event takes place in these like hillsides around Bakersfield, and these are all like private property, so you can't ride any of it any other time of the year.
Hmm.
You can't even pre-ride most of the course. And there's sections of it where there's no trail or anything like that, so they just like stick these like pink arrows on the
Okay.
grass, and you're just like kind of like riding looking for these arrows, trying to figure out which direction to go. The
Right.
GPS is like way off most of the time because trying to create a route when there isn't a route to do. And and then there's like a section where you go through a restaurant, and you actually ride through the restaurant, and there's people eating burgers and drinking
Crazy.
beer and whatever as you're riding through,
Yeah.
and cheering, which is kind of cool. There's like this 5 minute long hike a bike thing that is
Mhm.
impossible to ride, so it's full on hike a bike. So and then you have cows in the course. There's a video a couple years ago that went viral where a rider got hit by a cow.
I remember that.
So
Yep.
yeah, so
Mhm.
that's that event, and it's just a strange one. But I used to live in SoCal, so I've done quite a few of the SoCal road racing. Uh, I've won state championships in Florida, mountain bike and road and crit. In SoCal, I won road and crit. So I'm pretty familiar with that area, and the same promoter that does Rock Cobbler, he used to put on the race that was the state championships in Bakersfield. So I won that a couple of times. So I always enjoy racing there. I used to be SoCal used to be home for me, so it's cool to go back and do some riding over there, especially early season. Right now
Yeah.
it's snowing outside, so
Right.
it was 60 on race day, so kind of nice.
Well, congratulations. So
Yeah,
let's
thank you.
compare equipment. 2017, you're riding a road bike with tiny
Yeah.
tires, tubes. What were you riding last weekend?
So for Rock Cobbler, I rode my Orbea Terra gravel bike.
Okay.
I had a mix of wheels, rim defs. So I had a little bit more aero wheel on the front, a little bit shallower, lightweight on the rear.
Mhm.
Wheels from Oppo, which is Orbea's in-house wheel brand. And then I had 45 millimeter Continental tires, the Terra Speeds provided by Tires Direct,
Awesome.
uh, which is really cool because they sell every tire brand you can get. So like I don't have to follow a tire brand or model or anything. It's just pick whatever tire is the best option for that day, and they're cool with it.
That's great.
Um, what else? I did run a skin suit. I had a Casks Nirvana aero helmet. The cool ones with the ear covers.
Hmm.
Yeah, things have changed so much. I mean, 2017, I don't think people were really thinking about aero road helmets or
Right.
things like that. Aero helmets were TT only.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, wax chain, from Cyclolex, things like that. Things that,
Hmm.
10 years ago just didn't exist. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, what a difference. What do you think of the trend of people almost running old school mountain bikes now in these gravel events?
I mean, I can see the comparison, but it's
Hmm.
still a little bit different. Old school mountain bikes were 26-inch wheels, which are
True.
impossible to ride these days. Like try riding a bike on 26-inch wheels, you'll be like, what is this?
Yeah,
It's just
I
sketchy
remember
on your
those days.
fingers.
I can't believe we did it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
We didn't know any better, like what you
right,
don't know, you don't know.
right.
So But I can see, rigid and whatever, I can see the comparison, but like my bike now is so much more capable than, a bike that I would have been riding mountain bike trails on 20 years ago. Um, but I also don't believe that the biggest, there's a trend now of like running mountain bike tires for everything, and I don't believe that that's really the best option all the time. I think there's a place and time for it, but it's not there's not a one tire, one size fits all.
Yeah, what's your
So,
experience on that? I know people have run the mountain bike tires in like wind tunnels and said it's quote faster, but do you find that in reality or no?
so in the wind tunnel, what Dylan, who's a good buddy.
Sure.
So he ran a 2.2 tire against different sizes. So the 2.2 was faster than the 50
Okay.
millimeter. So basically a 54 millimeter tire is faster than a 50 millimeter tire in the wind tunnel.
Mhm.
But then, it's still slower than a 45, which is still slower than a 40. So like in the wind tunnel, narrower is still going to be better. Um, it's just that, there's like a weird bump in the curve.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, man. I don't think that there's one size that fits all for here. Like, for example, in Oregon, I think, the gravel there is so smooth and, it's about as good as gravel as it gets. So, like, I won all the Oregon Mike's events, all the Oregon Triple Crown events.
Right.
There's actually five events. I won all five on a 35 millimeter tire.
Okay.
3 years ago, for real West gravel, I'll probably run a 40 millimeter tire there
Mhm.
because there's no need to go any bigger. But then there's other events where you don't want to be caught on a on a narrow tire like that. You do need the volume. It makes a big difference. So I think that's part of the fun of gravel racing is having to figure out the equipment and what works, what doesn't work, and why are you going to run this versus that, and having all these options. I think that's actually really cool. I enjoyed that side of it.
Yeah, that is cool. And it's really great. You work with that tire company where you can pick what you want.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're out, Bike Tires Direct, they're actually out of Portland. So they'll be at some of the events up there. So you'll get to meet some of their crew at some point.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that side of it. With road cycling, the way it works is you join a team and you go to training camp in January, and they hand you a massive box of equipment, and it's got all your clothing, your bikes, and whatever, everything that you're going to run, and you have no say on anything.
Right.
It's like, here's your stuff. Like it or not, this is what you have to use. And, there's no input or feedback. And one of the things that I enjoy about gravel racing and mountain biking now is, doing the privateer thing. I only have to partner with brands that I want to partner with. If I don't believe your product, then, at the end of the day, even if a company can pay me a little bit more than the other, if I don't like the product, it's not going to benefit me. Sure, I can make a little bit more money right now, but what happens, when this thing fails at half of the events that I have to do this year, or
Right.
I'm at a disadvantage at every event that I do all year.
Mhm.
So I rather go with the companies that have you know the right support and good equipment. People that I believe in, and because it also makes it easier for me to tell like an honest story. Like, this is why I believe this company. This is why I like bicycle accident law. I believe that they're doing this for the right reason, and that kind of thing. It's an honest uh, honest take on the whole thing rather than like, okay, they pay me some money and it's like, you
Yeah.
ask most of the guys in the world tour, hey, what's that logo on your jersey? And they're gonna be like, oh, I don't know, I never noticed that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so they have no idea how they get paid.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, it sounds like you have a lot more freedom in your
yeah,
lifestyle. I think people would know, and I certainly want to know, like, what's the day-to-day life for you look like? I know you're married and have children. You have a lot
yeah.
more flexibility in what you can do now, or how does it compare to your old lifestyle?
So yeah, I have more freedom choosing my schedule. I have some amazing sponsors that everybody's just uh even recently I was asking a couple of sponsors like, hey, there's a weekend at the end of April where there's a big mountain bike gravel or a big mountain bike race and a big gravel race. Like, what do you prefer? And they're like, go do whatever makes you happy. Like
Yeah.
we're at the end of the day, like sending you to an event that you don't really want to do, you're not really going to do anything. So like go do what makes you happy and we're going to get more exposure from you doing that than you going to something else so it's cool that I get to choose my schedule. I try to include events where I have sponsors present and things like that,
Right.
uh, but also like I have a lot of freedom to figure out which events that I can go to and where, whatever. I've been doing a pretty good job on my side, keeping my name out there and results and things like that, and being valuable to companies. So I've been able to do okay, as far as making money and being able to reach out to different companies and actually go after the companies that I want to, not having options to choose from, and which is important to me, uh, because I make a living on this.
Sure.
Um, so it's a lot more flexibility in a way, when you're road racing, especially when you're in a big team, sometimes like you're at home training and you think that you have like 3 weeks till your next event, and then somebody somewhere on the other side of the world gets injured, and they're like, "Hey, we need you here tomorrow," and it's uh, like, what do you mean tomorrow? Like, for how
Right.
long?
Yeah.
For how long? It's like, so like we got 3 days of camp and then we're moving somewhere else. And then the race is in 2 weeks. And it's like, so I have to get on a plane tomorrow.
Hmm.
And then like I may or may not come back home in 3 weeks. Cool. Like it's just, you don't
That's
have,
not,
you don't
yeah,
have
that's
any
not cool.
control of your life,
Right.
and any say. That's just the job where what I'm doing now, I get to sit down and decide the schedule that works for me, works for my family, works for my sponsors. I do have, I am married. I do have 2 kids. My oldest will be 8 next month. My youngest is
Awesome.
4. I want to try and bring them to events a little bit more often now that they're getting to that age where a little bit easier. Um, so they'll start to come to more events more often. My wife used to go to events with me. When I was road racing, she was at all my races. But after having kids between their school, her work, and everything else, doing a little bit less of that, but it's starting to move towards doing a little bit more. I like to expose the kids to my lifestyle. I
That's
think
great.
cycling is an awesome lifestyle. Um, there's so much that I got to see because of riding my
Sure.
bike and places that I've been to that I would have never had a reason to go to. I just my kids think that riding a bike for a living is normal.
Yeah.
It's like
And
I
just
don't
think
know
about
any different.
yeah, think about the independence and freedom it gave you from such an early age. And that continues
Yeah,
on.
that's one of the things that I enjoy. Like to this day, I don't own a trainer. I've never ridden on Zwift. I don't ride indoors. Like being outside is really important to me. Is if um like I kind of need that outlet. It's like off season. Usually at the end of October, early November, I'll take 10 days off, and usually like by day 7, my wife is like, "When are you getting on your bike again?" Like she's
That's
just
great.
like,
Yeah.
"You need to get out of the house." Like
Yeah.
I'm just kind of moody and whatever. She's like, "You need to be outside. Go find something to do."
Yeah, that's why I
So
don't understand why people stop riding when there are all these avenues, mountain biking and gravel and all this ability to, I don't know, go on your own adventure, even if it's not a big deal.
it
Like
doesn't have to be
stuff you haven't
competitive.
seen before,
Yeah,
it's an incredible outlet just for that. And you will not think about your day job if you're out there on a bike. You just won't.
right. And so an interesting thing to me is like for example, if you're in the NFL,
Hmm.
you get to the end of your career and you're like, time to retire. You don't play football ever again.
Nope.
You can't just go to a local football event. Like there isn't that,
Hmm.
you know. And cycling is great because like, okay, you could race for 5, 10, whatever, however many years, right? And then one day you're like, I don't want to race bikes anymore. You can just go ride. You can go ride a mountain
Yeah.
bike. You can go ride with buddies. You can get an e-bike. There's all these other things that you can do. Um, there's a local guy that I've gotten to know because, I'm out training. Sometimes like I ran into this guy in a peak out here. It's like 20 miles from anything. It's at
Okay.
10,400 feet. And I ran into this guy at the top, and he's 74 years old,
Wow.
but he's got an e-bike now. So he like gets to go out there, and he's like, the e-bikes are super cool because, it allows me to get out there and be outside like when I was younger.
Right.
So he's got that freedom again. It's like, I'm retired. I don't have anything else really going on. I don't have to work. So he
That's
just takes
awesome.
his Orbea e-bike and just out there
Yeah.
all day.
It's awesome you tell that story. My partner Joella is a ultra runner, and every year she does javelina in the desert in
Yeah.
Arizona. In the last few years, we've seen this guy. He might be 80 with an e-bike, and he has a little like igloo cooler that he pulls on a trailer
Right.
behind it, and he rides all day and just passes out drinks to everybody.
That's
And
awesome.
I think it's amazing. He's still getting a ton of exercise. He's outside. He's enjoying himself. I mean, why not? Why not keep going?
Yeah, he's happy. But
Yeah,
a lot of these like, yeah, like NFL player, like you retire, you're done. You become a commentator, or if you're,
yeah.
baseball player, soccer player, like that it's kind of sucks. Like the thing that you grew up doing, all of a sudden
Mhm.
like you can't really do that ever again. So
Yeah.
and cycling to me is really cool because you get the opportunity to do all of that.
So do you have any like A races or big races that you're aiming for this year?
Yeah, I have a pretty busy schedule this year.
Mhm.
So kind of a little slow start. I did Rock Cobbler this past weekend, and then I don't have anything else until I go to Oregon.
Mhm.
Uh, I have two events the same weekend. So one is a Zone 5 Productions event. It's a mountain bike race. And then the second event is a Mudslinger Events gravel race, but they're in the same town, so it works out really well because they're back-to-back days, same city. Uh, so that'll be really cool. It's Red Echo to Red, or Red Echo to Echo is the first event, and then Real West Gravel is the second
And
day.
that's the Mudslinger event,
That's the Mudslinger event.
right? Okay.
And Mike and Scott, they kind of do a lot of stuff together as it is, so
Mhm.
it works out really well. Same city, everything, it's super easy. And then I have Sea Otter, Epic Rides, Whiskey Off Road at the end of April. Lemurian mountain bike race in NorCal, which I won that a couple of years ago. let's see, I gotta look this up, man.
It's
There's
okay.
17 events on my schedule this
Wow.
year.
Wow.
And then I have Unbound, which is big one.
Are you doing 100 or 200?
I'm doing 200 again this year.
Okay,
So
great.
I've done the 200 twice, and then last year I did the 100. Uh, I think that that race should be in between. It should be like a 150 would be the most amazing distance.
Right.
Because like the 200 is kind of drags on. 10 hours, 9 hours on the bike, whatever it is, it's a long time.
Right.
And it I think it makes the racing a little slow sometimes. You're just kind of waiting for people to flat out of the group or
Hmm.
whatever. Where the 100 is super dynamic, but the course is not selective enough. So like last year, we came to the finish in a 5 rider group for the win. I ended up fourth in the 100 last year. Just I don't not great sprinter, so it is
Yeah.
what it is.
Right.
Um, but a 100 would be, or a 150 Unbound would be really cool. I think that would be the best. So after that, I have Lost and Found, which is part of the UCI gravel series, and it's actually 45 minutes from my house. So that's kind of cool. It's basically my only like sort of local event. I have SBT gravel, the High Cascades 100 with Mike and Ben.
Of course.
Hopefully see you out there
You will see
this
me
year.
there. Yeah.
That one I won in 2020. And then I have a thing where I don't usually go back to races that I've already won
Right.
because I can't do better.
Yes.
Like you
I
can't
do.
improve on a win. You can win by more, but like at the end of the day, you're just winning.
Yeah.
So I took a couple of years out, and then I went out there last year. Ended up second. So I want to go back and win that one. And then I have BWR Monterey. I'm skipping Leadville this year. I did it the past 3 years, top 20 there the last 3 years, but I'm
Mhm.
skipping it. And I'm gonna do the 6 day Breck Epic stage race.
Oh, wow. That's
So
cool.
that should be really cool.
Hmm.
Um, That'll be a new one for me to do. I haven't done that event, but it looks like a real mountain bike race. 6 days. I've
Sure.
always liked stage race. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's in the middle of August. And then after that, I have Park City Point to Point, which I was third at last year, and that's like a 70. It's like the hardest 75-mile mountain bike race that you'll ever do.
Okay.
It's
What's the climbing in that one?
12,000, but in
Oh,
75 miles.
God, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's real mountain bike trails around Park City.
Mm.
It's not like Leadville where it's like a rough gravel event.
Yeah.
It's a real mountain bike race.
Hmm.
And then I'm also doing the Pocatello Ultra. And the cool thing is that so I met the owner, the promoter for Pocatello Ultra, and he's partnered with the Park City Point to Point. So they're gonna do basically a two event kind of thing, but they're
Okay.
2 weeks apart. So I have time to come home and whatever and get back out there. But they'll have like a sort of a overall, for the two events combined. So Park City 75 miles, the Pocatello I think is 100 miles, and they're both like 12,000 feet of elevation gain. Real
Wow.
mountain bike races.
Right.
Um, yeah, man, busy. Like you know, uh, there's no stretch longer than 2 weeks. I think.
That's a
Where
hell of a schedule. I'll
I
see it
try.
unbound. I'll see it unbound too.
Okay, cool.
We're gonna be a vendor there, and
Oh,
then
cool.
Odie's doing Cowboy Cyclist is doing
Yep.
350, and then I'm doing the 100. So I'll be there.
Nice.
Hope to survive
Awesome.
the 100. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done it before?
No, this will be my first year there. I'm
Cool.
excited to go and just see the whole scene. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah. It's like Unbound is like a bucket list event that you have to go and check out,
Yes.
Is yeah. It's just one of those that you just kind of have
From what I
to
know,
do once.
it's the
Yeah,
North Course, right?
yeah.
Okay, I'm happy about that, I think, comparing it to
You
the
know,
South Course if it rains. So,
so yeah, so I did the South course twice, and then last year I did the North course. And last year before the event, they talked it up like way harder, way more challenging, way more up
mm,
and down, way harder on equipment, and it wasn't. So like I did the 100, and I was like, all right, the course is not selective enough for 100.
right.
Um, and like even the 200 came down to like there's the first two guys, and then after that, there's a group of 10 that came in together.
Yeah.
Where in the past it was like ones and twos always. Um, but yeah, I think that'll be cool. I think you'll enjoy it. It'll be good.
It'll
So
be it'll be fun. I just didn't want it to be like my racing in Florida in the early 90s on mountain bikes where it would rain and then all it
yeah,
turned into is a push fest, you
yeah.
know.
There's some
So,
spots there that I remember a few of those down there in Florida. Like I did all the gone riding stuff for many years, and
mhm.
yeah, there's a few.
You remember those some places in Ocala, if I recall correctly, when they got wet, or Brooksville, if they got wet, look out.
Yeah, was it? Trying to remember what it was now. Maybe it was Gainesville. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, a long time back, but yeah, like
Yeah.
some of those were, yeah, it would start raining and it was miserable. And
Yeah.
you always got rain just because it was the time of the year.
Do you
So,
have, Stefano, a favorite bike, or all of them your favorite bikes?
like from my whole career, or
Yeah, like from your whole career.
man, it's like probably two. Um, like in 1998, I had a Ritchie that was like a 25th edition. It was like super cool, extremely rare.
Right.
I have a hard time even finding a picture of the color of it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like that nostalgia of the time, like the
Yeah.
90s vintage,
Yeah.
but like my current mountain bike, the Orbea Ois that I have right now,
Amazing. Right.
it's incredible. Like that thing is the most capable bike I've ever ridden, ever owned. The fastest mountain bike I've ever owned. And it's like one of those things where I can get out there, just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, without having to be like, all right, maybe I should turn around, or am I getting trouble? Like I've found myself like even a couple weeks ago, like way out in the middle of Nevada, there's nothing between here and Vegas
Yeah.
basically. And just I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't have phone service or anything like that, but like I wasn't worried because those bikes are so capable that I don't have to worry about uh flatting a narrow tire or breaking something, or
Yeah. What travel does that bike have?
it's a 120 front and rear.
Okay. Okay.
So it's plenty travel for for most things. Of course, if you go real downhill sections, like which we have plenty of around Lake Tahoe,
Mhm.
you could go a lot faster on a bigger travel bike. But even with the 120 XC bike that I have, you can pretty much ride almost anything. Um, yeah, that bike is incredible. It's just over 21 pounds with 2.4 tires on it, 120 millimeter travel front and rear. It's insane what that bike
Yeah.
can do.
The technology that these bikes have now is just
Yeah,
incredible as compared to a 90s mountain bike or even a bike from 15 years ago.
yeah.
It's
No,
insane.
that's the thing. Like back when the first time I did a High Cascades, I'm like, I don't know if my bike is gonna make it through this thing.
Right.
These days, like I take great care of my equipment and things like that, but like
Mhm.
it's never a worry of mine, like if my bike is gonna make it through the Vic,
Yeah.
I never start like, hey, I gotta be really easy on equipment right now because I need to get through. It's always just like go race.
Do you
The
have a
bike
favorite
will.
ride? Do you have a favorite ride or a favorite place to ride?
Yeah, in the summer for sure, the Tahoe Rim Trail out here.
Yeah.
So Lake Tahoe is a basin, so there's like a huge mountain range that goes
Hmm.
all the way around. So the paved lap around the lake is 71 miles, but the Tahoe Rim Trail is 170 miles to go all the way around. Um, and then there's like hundreds of trails that branch off of that everywhere. So, you go up there to Tahoe Rim Trail and like you can ride as all day, from sunrise to sunset and come out of there and be like, that was the most amazing trail I've ever done in my life.
That's cool. I've been there in the winter. I've never had the opportunity to,
Dude,
my bike out
yeah,
there, but I need to.
we got to talk about it at some
Yeah,
point
that's
for
for sure.
sure. Yeah, maybe September would be a good time, good weather, and
Yeah,
we'll
that'd
figure
be
something
great.
out.
Um, Not something I like to talk with cyclists about, but have you had any scary moments you know, on a bike, on the road?
Uh, Unfortunately, you know,
Yeah.
like even yesterday, had a truck that came by a little too close. I was 2 minutes into my ride, and you just,
Ah,
when you feel the wind, you're like, all right, that was extremely unnecessary.
yeah.
Luckily, never gotten hit by a car.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I know 4 people this past year that got hit by cars.
Wow.
I try to stay safe for the most part. I know there's a few things even I've seen on the bicycle accident law that I think I've been aware of for a few years. Like for example, take up your space on the road a little bit. Like if you
Well, that-
try to stay too close to the right, sometimes cars are like there's room and they'll just try to get through. But if you take up a little bit more, they have to be aware that you're there and they have to actually, you know,
yes.
make an effort to go around things like that. I try to wear stuff that sticks out a little bit more, like color wise, things like that. Um, a few years ago, I was out riding and I posted a video where I had a white jacket and a blue helmet, and it was in the winter. Here,
Mhm.
it's like my white jacket just blends in with the entire background,
Yeah.
because of snow, and my blue skies. Pretty much every day here is blue skies, So like I was basically in camo. So I tried to wear a red helmet, like the kit for this year with the red bibs and red shorts and all of that. Part of it is to promote visibility,
Yes.
um, things that make it easy to see. So, unfortunately, yeah, it's part of our thing that we have to deal with sometimes, and it sucks because, I don't know. I'm not sure what goes through people's minds where they're just too already into their day where they're not really thinking of anybody else's lives and how it might affect families and whatever else, and just yeah. I always say, if somebody buzzes you or curses you out or whatever it is, don't respond, don't say anything. Like they're already having a much worse day than you are.
Yes.
Like you're on your bike, you're already winning. Like there's nothing you can do to convince that person that otherwise. So let it be. Um, yeah, it sucks,
It
but
does. And I tell people all the time the same thing. There's no reason to yell back at somebody or hit someone's car, or even if
yeah,
they did something wrong by buzzing you, you know, get too close to you because you don't know what they have. They could use their vehicle as a weapon. They may have a weapon. There's a lot of
right.
crazy people out there
No,
these
I'm not
days.
winning against a car or a gun
Yeah.
or whatever it is. There's nothing I can take from that.
Yeah,
But
I mean, one of the reasons besides just being a cyclist for a long time, that I'm so passionate about this. About 5 years ago, I thought I was going to die. Um, I was riding my mountain bike to basically a yoga class in the morning, and I think I ran into a drug deal gone bad,
Okay.
and they chased me down the wrong way on a one-way road. Ended up pulling their vehicle, screeching their tires and pulling up their vehicle right in front of me and blocked me. I had to run underneath this house. I thought he was going to kill me, and I was
Right.
just yelling at him as loud as I could. And the light in the house came on, and when the light in the house came on, he left, and
Wow.
it shook me up so much. And I didn't do anything that day, but I just want to make sure that no one has to go through those experiences. I
So
mean,
is that how bicycle accident law came about?
it's
Is
part of this, it's part of the story. I mean, I have never been hit as well, but I've been involved in, multiple incidents, that being the worst one. In my career, I've always done some type of quote plaintiff's work, but I got burnt out on doing the trial work that I did, and I tried cases, throughout the country, and I was actively doing work for big insurance companies like Lloyd's of London, for example. I got a lot
right.
of great training, but then I started getting treated like, I don't know, just another accounting line. I was like, how in the world can I continue doing the work? I like doing the trial work, but how can I combine one of my passions, which is riding, because I race mountain bikes and do an event a year, and I just really love it for the adventure more than anything else anymore. How can I combine um, what I'm trained to do with my passion? And so I'm not the only bicycle lawyer out there, but I'm the only one that does it coast to coast.
Right.
And I love the fact that, people are greatly helping me out with giving me, quality work, but we give back to the community, give back to Mudslinger, giving back to athletes throughout the country. I
Yeah.
just, we talked about it before. I want to give back as much as I can because I love the
Right.
sport. I love the people involved in the sport. And it's worked out well so far. Another reason is my dad was my inspiration, and he passed away in 2020. And this has given me a vehicle. He passed away from Parkinson's. And it's
Oh,
given me a vehicle for every dollar I make, I give back to Parkinson's charities. So it's a win-win for everybody.
right. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's super cool to hear. Yeah. Because, I know you've been a lawyer for a long time, but I wasn't sure how we didn't get a chance to talk about it before, how bicycle accident law came about, or, you know, so yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so yeah, I've had my own firm since 2001, so a long
Right.
period of time, 24 years. And then in 2018, I started making the shift to doing nothing but these bicycle cases. And I'm lucky enough to have done cases all the way from Florida to we represented a triathlete in Washington State
Wow.
recently on a case. I've got some Canadian clients, some Massachusetts clients. So people are finding out that we have a unique way of handling the work.
Right.
And if, for example, the guy that we're helping out in Vero Beach on a case this week, he was training for Unbound and probably,
Okay.
and win some local stuff, and he's got a certain power output wattage pursuant to his Garmin. We can transfer that loss of power or watts into a recovery for him because he's not going to be able to train. We can show the data. And then because the
Interesting.
insurance industry knows us and knows my firm, they have a lot of respect for what we're doing. That's kind of a
Right.
unique way of handling these cases. And I will tell everybody in my audience knows, but everybody that might listen on your side, get coverage,
Right.
get uninsured motorists, because if not, there's so many uninsured or underinsured drivers out there. It's just the best thing you can do.
And as far as that goes, like, is there a certain uh amount in the policies that you recommend for that, or
Is as much as
just
you
kind
can
of varies?
afford is what I would
Okay.
say. So generally it links up with your liability coverage. So let's say you have automobile insurance coverage of $10,000, then you can purchase a $10,000 uninsured motorist policy. To me, that's not enough in liability coverage. So
Right.
if you can get $100,000 in liability coverage, then you yourself can get $100,000 in your own UM, and that'll protect you as a pedestrian or as a cyclist.
Okay. It's good to know. 'Cause I mean, I've had accidents before, unfortunately, crashes,
Sure.
nothing involving a car, but like, yeah, by the time you get an ambulance and you go 3 miles, that's $10,000 already, usually.
Yeah. And
So,
then it's also important for everybody to know that my services are basically free until I make a recovery for you.
right.
So all the work that we put into these cases is um it's there. I mean, we do the work and we do not get paid for any of the costs or expenses we put into a file unless we recover for you. And that's often very helpful because a lot of cyclists don't have a lot of money, but that way we can help.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like having insurance, except doesn't cost anything up front. Like, because
Exactly.
insurance, you're paying every month, where your service is, I try to tell people, just follow bicycle accident law, follow, Matt Scarborough, because, it's at least like a resource that you can have that doesn't cost any money. But, if hopefully you never need it, but if one
Right.
day, yeah,
Unfortunately, it's going to continue for a while, unless
yeah,
we're all driving electronic cars, that are doing the AI work for us. But that's going to be a long time from now, I think.
yeah, even that, that's not a solution either. But,
No, I don't
um,
think so.
cool.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate your time today very much, Stefano.
yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad we got a chance to catch up a little bit, and,